Well, it is 6 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, November 5th, 2025. It is the day after elections across the country in this off year. And pretty good night for socialists. New York electing Mondami, first Democrat socialist mayor of New York, as well as good night if you feel like raising taxes in Colorado. LLMM both passing, as well as Denver's vibrant bond package, which is initially $1 billion, will at the end of it run to $2 billion. So Republicans and conservatives losing in school board races, city council races across Colorado, with the exception of, like, I think Elizabeth might have been the only place that still remains a little bastion of conservatism, electing its 3 conservative candidates there. But man, what a night. Would love to hear from you as we're providing analysis this morning on the future of Colorado. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. I've said on this show, I've said it over and over again in conversations, the notion of a Colorado libertarian on social issues, conservative on fiscal issues, is thinking from 10 years ago. The Democrat Party is embracing the Democrat socialist agenda. It is getting more progressive. It is getting more socialist. They show up in droves, 30,000 people for Bernie Sanders. That is the direction of the state of Colorado, and I think it bore out very clearly in last night's election results. Colorado is not a purplish state. It is a deep blue, progressive, on its way to socialist state, from my perspective. Bill, what did you think of last night?
I was surprised by a number of results. And see, the thing is, I'm worried when you sit there and say, well, this is obviously that America wants to become socialist. And I disagree with that fundamentally. I don't think that America is making a march towards socialism. Could you see it closer to something like the social democracies inside of Europe? Yeah, probably. In part because we, as an economic system, refuse to deal with the growing inequity. And that will be a problem. And if the current system you have is delivering the inequity, then why not be willing to change or tweak the system? That's what I think many people inside the conservative sphere are struggling with. The idea that what you say works, a lot of people in America are saying it's not working for me. And the refusal to look at that and maybe change things. And I think that's going to be a problem.
How are we dealing with this inequity?
We aren't. That's kind of what I'm looking at. We aren't.
We voted yesterday. So what is the vision? What is the plan to deal with this inequity? How are the Americans choosing to deal with this inequity?
Right now, they're going to be choosing more Democrats, and they're going to be choosing people that are going to look at raising taxes and
raising taxes.
Yeah, but raising taxes isn't a plank of socialism. Plank of socialism is owning the means of production. It's not the idea.
Oh, that's communism, which is just one step removed, because you're not going to be able to tax your way out of it. You don't tax your way into prosperity. Never happens.
Never tax your way into prosperity?
No.
What was the tax rate structure in the 50s and 60s here in America when we were
and what was the social network?
Oh wait, that's
in the 50s and 60s.
Hang on,
as well.
That's different. Now you're adding more things to the pie.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. Yes, you said no.
We actually pay more taxes now than we did back then. In Colorado, you pay more taxes now as a person than you did in the 50s and 60s.
Per capita, or fundamentally based on percentages?
I think probably both.
You also can earn more. So that's the other question, is if we have a higher standard of learning, again, of living, I'm wondering how you're coming to that conclusion. I think you might be able to find that inside inside of numbers. However,
Inside of numbers.
It's 6 o'clock in the morning. What I'm saying is, if you're looking, I'll go back. If you want to look at certain tables and charts, you probably could make that argument. I don't think it is necessarily borne out over my larger point, which was the time in which we refer to as America being most prosperous, we had a much more regressive tax system than we had right now. That's what I'm going towards. That's why, in my mind, many of the Democrats are making hay and the conservatives are losing some of these issues. And the idea being, and what I'll point to, is things like LL and MM. Now,
Correct.
I agree that these things should be means tested. However, I probably think that, I do think that a large portion of people that voted for it had a look and had to look at their own situation and figure out, am I closer to having a household that's going to make $300,000 annually, or am I closer to needing food assistance? And chances are, the most people that voted for that are much closer to needing food assistance. That's an issue.
Why? So help me understand why in Colorado, which has had Democrat control for nearly a decade, people are closer to needing food assistance.
In part because of the tax structure that we have. I still don't think that here in Colorado is necessarily regressive enough. And I think that's part of it.
We've had a 3,000% increase in the number of fees you're paying.
Yeah. And again, I dislike some of the fees. And the fees to me are nominal, and it's a way around certain things. I would look at changing the structure.
Right.
I would,
Well, no, you're paying.
I agree.
You're paying more taxes than you've ever paid before. You're paying more taxes in Colorado right now than any other generation in Colorado history. And you just said we are closer to needing food assistance.
Yes, because who's paying the taxes? The tax burden has been shifted to middle and lower classes.
Not true.
That's where the fees are. Yes.
Not true at all.
Yes, it is.
In fact,
yes.
What is it? The top 1% pay 40% of the taxes, of the total amount of taxes?
What's the amount of wealth they have? That's the issue.
What do you mean? What is the amount of wealth that they
what's
have?
a percentage of wealth they have versus the percentage of the wealth had by the middle and lower classes? That's the issue. It's the growing wealth gap.
The issue is you think you can fix this problem, and the voters of Colorado, I think, believe this, that they can fix the problems in Colorado by taxing the producers more. If we just tax them more, if we just get more of their money, all this stuff's going to work out. And then they can't figure out why they don't get a raise at work.
That's a different structure in my mind.
Oh,
yeah.
It is all connected,
hang on a
brother.
sec. Wait, no. Because we go back to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2015, 2016, 2016, and 2017, 2018. The idea being that this was going to spur company investment and wage growth and job growth, and it did none of that. The vast majority of that went to stock buybacks and bonuses. So it didn't do what it was supposed to. So cutting the taxes to the, quote, providers and the businesses didn't produce the outcome you say it will.
And how well did that Inflation Reduction Act work?
It did okay. It did okay.
It drove up inflation greater than anything else this country's ever done.
I disagree. I think some of that you can look at the supply chain, and we'd have to look at the timeline as far as inflation. And Inflation Reduction Act, inflation did actually, I believe, go down after they implemented that, which would counteract that premise. But we can look at it.
Well, feel free to join the conversation, because if you think that as a result of last night's elections, that Colorado is going to be more affordable, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say at this point. We've been doing this for a decade. We keep doubling down on Democrats and progressive policies in the state of Colorado, and it is more expensive, more difficult. People have less money. You are taxed more. Your fees are up 3,000%. And the voters of Colorado said, yes, please, more of that. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis text line. We should just call it the tax line now in Colorado. 720-819-5115. Now is time for News and Comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, News and Comment.
Good Wednesday morning, 35 and clear in Denver, expecting a high of 69 today. Maybe we'll get to 70. It'll feel nice and warm with the sun out. News sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story.
If anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him.
Okay, we'll hear more from the commie in a second. Unofficial results from last night show 5 lefties leading their races for spots on the council in Aurora. Rob Andrews and Allie Jackson are currently the top vote getters in the race for 2 at-large seats, with the great Danielle Jurinsky in third.
Just crazy. Just crazy to me. Like we literally earlier this week, or maybe it was late last week, showcased that Aurora's had the steepest decline in violent crime out of any major city in Colorado.
Yes.
And the voters are like, oh, get those leaders out.
Yeah, that doesn't feel good enough to us.
Bro, crime? Decline in crime?
Right.
Yeah,
why would you want a safe place to live? Why? It doesn't matter. Horton, Wiles, and Medina were also leading their races last night. Mayor Mike Hoffman, as Jeff just mentioned, said the Republicans didn't seem fired up enough, and he's worried about the impact the results will have on businesses and law enforcement. Let's hear about this guy.
And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power.
I guarantee you 95% of the people cheering right there had no idea what he just said.
I remember Venezuela when they elected Hugo Chavez.
Yes.
And how excited they were. And now it's going to go to the people. And then 60 Minutes was down there 2 weeks ago. And it's completely corrupt-ridden.
Oh, man.
Nobody has money to do anything there.
It's been that way for a decade, over a decade.
Yeah. I remember all the flags, a little Venezuelan
15
flags.
years. What am I saying? Yeah.
That was back in the Bush days when Hugo Chavez got control of Venezuela. Look, it's always a great night when you first elect a socialist.
Yeah.
And then you'll
so
never
true.
match it again. You'll never match that night again.
No doubt. Yeah, make sure you text Jeff on the tax line today and every day.
Tax line.
That is so perfect. We need to change it. Absolutely. 2 ballot measures that would provide funding for public school students to receive free meals appear poised to pass. Proposition LL would take excess tax revenue collected by the state and funnel it into the Healthy School Meals for All program. Proposition MM would increase taxes on wealthier Coloradans to additionally fund the program. Why doesn't Polis just
Why
fund
haven't
it?
I gotten a raise? I haven't gotten a raise in forever. Oh,
That's
we
right.
taxed your boss to pay for everybody else's lunch. Why
That's
haven't I
right.
gotten a raise?
That's right. Well, the governor has enough money. Why don't he just fund it all? Jeez, just feed everybody. Why don't you do that? As of the polls closing Tuesday, 64% voted yes on LL, while almost 58% voted yes on MM. Across the country, Democrats emerged victorious in Tuesday night's key elections. Kami Dani will be New York City's next mayor.
This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
So, Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
What does that mean? Turn the volume up. Okay. Oh, I see, because he was watching TV. I'm sorry. And watching Kami. See what else he says here. Oh, he's such a great orator. Orator.
We will hold bad landlords to account because the Donald Trumps of our city have grown far too comfortable taking advantage of their tenants.
Not if you have rent control.
We will put an end to the culture of corruption that has allowed billionaires like Trump to evade taxation and exploit tax breaks.
Okay.
We will stand alongside unions and expand labor protections because we know, just as Donald Trump does, that when working people have ironclad rights, the bosses who seek to extort them become very small indeed.
All right, so he's going to give you everything you've ever wanted in New York City.
Gosh, isn't that right?
And more.
And it's amazing to me how much the mayor of New York City is winning just confronting Trump, right?
Yeah,
like they're
absolutely.
Trump.
Yeah.
What does Trump have to do with the guidance and leadership of New York City?
Well, that's funny you say that because DJT posted, you saw this, Trump wasn't on the ballot. That's what he posted. And it's true. However, he was on the ballot for them, for the left. I mean, if Mom Donnie didn't have him to target, then who knows? Maybe he wouldn't have been. Maybe the excitement and enthusiasm wouldn't have been there. Possibly. Hey, by the way, how was the pizza party in Elizabeth?
Dude, that was the only bright shining star last night. That was that wife and the conservative for kids slate out in Elizabeth.
That's
one
awesome.
big, which I'd just like to point out to the stupid ACLU that tried to sue the district. Your strategy backfired.
Yes.
To the stupid idiots that came out and wrote swastikas all over my wife's signs and then cut them with knives, and her slate mates, that backfired.
Yeah,
don't
did.
bring that crap to Elizabeth, man.
Exactly. That's exactly. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
She did a great job, ran a great campaign. Thank God we still have people like her, and you guys working hard in Colorado. California voters have spoken, and Proposition 50 has passed. The measure redrawing congressional maps to favor Democrats was approved on Tuesday. Prop 50 was an effort by Governor Newsom designed to let Democrats win more seats in Congress. A horrific UPS jet crash at Louisville Muhammad Ali Airport Tuesday killed 7 people. Just horrible. That's some audio from a truck driver who actually witnessed it, and it was just, I found it on AZ Intel on X, the video of the plane. Oh my goodness. Sent a massive fireball into the air over the airport, and smoke from the fire lingered for hours. The MD-11 was loaded with some 38,000 gallons of fuel as it took off. The jet had 3 crew members on board when it exploded, resulting in damage to a number of nearby buildings, and they're expecting there may be more casualties than the 7 that they have found. They just do not know. The Schumer shutdown is now in day 36, making it the longest in U.S. history as the fallout continues from air travel woes to loss of food assistance benefits. Some senators are hopeful the shutdown could end this week. Well, the elections are over. Maybe it will. Republican Oklahoma. Nope. No, you don't think so?
No way.
No.
We're entrenching ourselves. It's just going to get more and more entrenched.
Yep. They can try to feed off it somehow. Here's Mark Wayne Mullen.
We feel like now, after the No Kings rally, our neck is simply in a guillotine, and now they got to wait until after the election. That last week, Liz, I know Dick Durbin wanted to break with the Democrats and reopen the government. Chuck Schumer, in a private meeting with other Democrat senators, said that if you'll just wait till after the election, I'll release the handcuffs. I added the handcuff part, but basically I'm paraphrasing what he said. The reason why is because they're afraid their base wouldn't show up today in Virginia, New Jersey, and in New York. So.
All right, the Supreme Court will hear arguments today in a fast-track case over the legality of DJT sweeping tariffs. The court's decision could have massive implications for American consumers and businesses, the economy, and presidential authority. Lightning at the Avalanche last night, early second period.
Customer, McKenna just feeding him. Here comes Colton. He's got a bright backhand. Score! Ross Colton. Vasilevsky kicks it into his own net.
And the Avalanche won it 3-2. Dion's going to start freshman quarterback Julian Lewis at quarterback this Saturday morning at West Virginia as the Buffs try to bounce back. 34 in Aurora, 33 in Lakewood, 35 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Pretty good look at November weather. It'll be a mix of high clouds and sun and very, very mild. We're going to be well up into the 70s today, 30s and low 40s tonight. A little bit cooler, sunny and a little breezier, 65 to 70 Wednesday, lower 40s Wednesday night. For Thursday, increasing high clouds, breezy, 60s, and a bit cooler for Friday and Saturday, 50s and 60s as a couple of frontal systems will come through. But any moisture with these fronts at the end of the week and the start of the weekend will stay in the mountains and to our north. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. The morning after. Rough night for Coloradans, my opinion. Text messages are hot. 3631. Colorado's so outnumbered by Democrats of all flavors that arguing about rising financial impacts is pointless. Conservatives are in the ever-growing minority, and there are fewer listening. South Park Mike. Mike, I think you're exactly right. I go down and talk with these folks, interview them, and I've been saying for a while that the Democrat Party is going through its Tea Party moment, which means it's eschewing the moderates. It wants more combative, more feisty Democrats, in particular, to fight Donald Trump, and that direction is more socialist. You saw the election of Mandami last night to New York, a socialist. I've hosted Deep Singh Badesha in the studio here, a Democrat socialist who says that in the rooms that the Democrats are meeting in, that the more combative you are to Donald Trump, the more socialist in your embrace, the bigger the response. It's why he thinks that Phil Weiser is going to be the Democrat nominee, because Phil has embraced that track while Michael Bennet has tried to be a kind of a more traditional moderate, and I put that in quotes, Colorado Democrat. But 30,000 people showed up for Bernie Sanders and AOC. Not moderate Democrats, socialist Democrats. The state is going this direction. And what I just find ironic is that they complain about the direction of the state. They complain about how expensive it is, about all the problems that we face, and they continue to double down on an ever more progressive track. To me, it's an intelligence issue. Let's go to the phone lines. William in Denver. Good morning, William. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Good morning.
So I've spent 40 years managing money. I retired last December 31st, so I've got a lot of experience talking about these topics and, collection of data. I'm in my car. But so let's talk about tax cuts. Usually, tax cuts increase tax revenue. It's kind of counterintuitive, but if you look up things like the velocity of money, you understand that when you leave money in an economy, it can get taxed multiple times. The most recent example is the 2017 tax cut under Trump. And if you look at tax revenue in the United States between that period of time and the last reporting year, which would be 2024, federal tax revenue was up 40%. Now, we also ran enormous budget deficits during that period of time, including 1.8 in the most recent year. And so the question was, how does that happen? How do you increase revenue, but your budget deficits go up? Well, the answer is spending increased 70% at the federal level between that year. So the tax revenue was overruled by the spending. And that's not atypical, by the way, in government institutions. Okay, so that's speaking strictly at the federal level. But talking a little bit more about the long term, here's a book I think it's very much worth reading. It's How Countries Go Broke. It's by the founder of Bridgewater Associates, the largest hedge fund in the world. Ray Dalio recently retired. Very much a capitalist, very wise fellow about how these things work, and it's worth reading. By the way, coming around to Billy's points, he is very worried about the income disparity or the net worth disparity in this country, which is at the greatest amplitude ever. And he suggests that foments the kind of reaction that we saw in New York City. In other words, a reactionary vote. Not necessarily a wise vote, but a reactionary vote, particularly from the youth that say, what you guys are doing ain't working. And you know what? If you step back and look at the amount of debt this country's taken on, the amount of unfunded liabilities this country has, there's a case to be made that we shouldn't be defending the status quo that much. Not to suggest that I agree with socialist tendencies, and there I'll stop.
William, I think you're right in the sense that there's frustration, but as you pointed out, the amount of social programs that we have created is bigger and more extensive than at any point in this country's history. So all the eggs are being put in the basket of we need to hand more money to the government with the hopes that they can create the programs we need, as Bill pointed out, in order to even eat during the day.
Well, it's enigmatic because simultaneously the wealthy class is cashing in on all of this. Okay, so the net worths of the upper 1% have expanded amazingly over the last several decades, while the average person hasn't. And so, again, it's one thing when you start critiquing somebody's new ideas, it's kind of implied that you're defending the status quo, while the status quo was running enormous deficits, unfunded liabilities, and the wealthy class is benefiting and the others aren't. Whether we like that or not, that is more or less, I think, an accurate representation of the starting conditions.
Yeah, and William, that's what I've been saying is the problem with the voters confronting reality, because when that exists inside of our economy and we say this is the capital system that works the best, and you have more and more people falling behind, they don't remain convinced this system works. Now, they will look at other systems as an alternative, and when someone like, in my opinion, Mamdani comes along and promises you, one, to make your life easier and to make things cost a little bit less, and to maybe shift tax bases onto those that you've seen as the winners in the economy, that's a sexy message. That is the sweet song of socialism that Peter Boyles talks about in many ways, about we will take care of you. That's the appeal, because what the system you're in right now isn't allowing you the ability to get ahead. That's what I'm kind of saying.
Well, that's right. And socialism looked real attractive into feudal Europe during the Middle Ages because those people had no upward mobility. And all of a sudden, the system promises them some equity or equality within the thing. So again, I'm not defending it one way or the other. I'm just an observer. The other thing to look at is The Fourth Turning, Neil Howe's book that says that the hero generation will come along and overturn the institutions that they think the previous generation screwed up. And we are right at that fourth generation coming off of World War II. 45 to 25 is 80 years. That's 4 generations. So anyway, I got to go, gentlemen. Always a thoughtful conversation.
Hey, thanks William. Appreciate
William's
it, man.
got to go make money. Good job, William. All right. Let's get to a break. Phone lines are hot. Feel free to join the conversation. 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. It's the morning after a off-year election. So not a midterm. Midterm will be next year. This was called an off-year election. And is it just the natural bounce back that happens in politics? One side wins one year, another side wins the next year. But are we getting more and more polarized, so the swings are getting greater? That's one way to look at what happened last night, as socialism seems to have embraced the evening and been the winner, especially in New York City, as Mamdani takes the victory lap. Let's go to Marcus and Aurora. Good morning, Marcus. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Good morning, guys. I was happy that Mamdani won in New York City. Just let me say what I want to say, and then you can take it over. You know, we fought for communism from Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan. We're in Europe now. And they call it socialism now. So what always interests me about that election, 80% of the women in New York voted for that man. And another thing is that the younger generations, they don't know what socialism is. But I just find it fascinating. And that's all I got to say.
Bill, your response?
Yeah, and I think, Marcus, that's part of why the younger generation is open to the conversation, just like our previous caller, William, is saying, that they are seeing the structure stacked against them. And when they view the system as no longer allowing upward mobility, then they're going to be open to another system. You can say, well, socialism isn't going to give you any upward mobility. Well, we're already there. So what's the harm going to be? Well, it's going to raise taxes, okay? But they don't have that much money anyway. It's going to really raise their taxes that much. Their taxes are going up. And they're also in a situation where they can face medical bankruptcies. And a lot of these kids in that in that situation are faced with crushing student loan debt. So what is that? And so the idea of someone coming along saying, well, maybe in socialism we'll have free education. How is that necessarily a negative? I think that is the conversation that we are refusing to acknowledge inside of America, that there is a growing number of people that feel there is no longer any upward mobility. I think it's Gen X, or is it the Ys behind us, are expected to be, I think it's Gen X's, my generation, is the first generation not to be expected to be able to achieve a higher living standard than our parents. And let's look at that, Marcus, because if you're telling me that capitalism allows growth and allows us to achieve, yet you have an entire generation that becomes the first not to have the ability to have a higher living standard than their parents, doesn't mean the situation is succeeding. And should we assume anybody below us is going to be able to achieve higher than Gen X is? And if that's the cycle, then what's the sales point of the marketing message behind capitalism at that point? That's the problem we have to confront.
But Billy, you know socialism doesn't work. And this is going to be an example. I tell people right now, watch what happens in New York when he's sworn in December, and watch it, and you're going to see it's going to be unbelievable.
Well, I don't know how he's going to do it, Marcus. And here's the idea is, I think when you say, let's see what happens, do we really believe that Mamdani is going to enact major socialist changes inside of New York City? Is he going to be able to make all the buses and subways free? No, I don't believe so. I don't believe there's any functional way. Could he do it in small pieces? Yeah. Could he open up hundreds of free city-run grocery stores? No. The structure doesn't exist for that. Could he open up some in pockets? And so I think a lot of this will depend upon how practical he is. If he is going to shoot for the moon and figure this is my one shot and I'm going to try to grab the brass ring, he's going to fail. But if he comes at this practically and figures out where could this specific thing I'm in favor assist individuals, he might have some success. And the reason I say that is because we have some European countries that are social democracies where they have taken portions of their economy and it leans closer to socialism. And they have had success. The people there achieve. Yeah. Yes.
Really?
In fact, yeah, many of them, yeah.
Compare the size of their economies versus ours.
Well, wouldn't that also be a function of people? I mean, if we're just looking at size of economy, we'd look at China and say that China's blended economy is a fantastic success. It's just size numbers. Well, I'm talking about the idea of...
I don't think it's just the amount of people.
But hang on, but you just said size of economy, and size of economy there would be China.
Look at this. Look at the quality
numbers.
and size of our economy.
Yeah, and the quality and size of China's is very close. So is that necessarily a degradation of what America's is, if we're talking about pure numbers? And where I'm going with this is the idea of what do the individuals that are living in those countries, how do they rate their quality of life? How do they rate work-life balance? How do they rate levels of achievement? How do they rate the ability to move up in stratospheres? That's it. And we're seeing more of that right now, that idea reflected in some of those European countries that lean towards democrat socialism. That's why I'm saying there is some there. Finland, Norway, some of those in that area, some like Netherlands, things like that. And so that's the idea. Yeah.
Do you think Madani's going to pull this off?
Only if he is reasonable and measured in what he's able to do. One, doesn't have a larger constituency, so he doesn't have a whole bunch of socialists that are going to let him go wild. If he is targeted, if he takes some low-income areas and makes busing in that area free, or drops in some low-cost grocery stores, he may have some success. But if he is trying to drop a city-run grocery store in Albany, he's going to fail. That's going to be the issue. It's going to have to be targeted. Yeah. If he shoots for the moon, he's going to fail. If he is targeted and measured in his response so he can turn around in the next election and say, look at my limited successes, he may have some success. But I'm going to hold my powder until it gets there. I don't have a lot of faith that he's going to achieve all the stuff that he says he's going to be able to. But as a rule, I don't have a lot of faith in any politician, regardless of party, saying that they are going to achieve what they say they're going to. So again, I'm going to color it that way, my friend.
Yeah.
How do you think he's going to do? What do you think he's going to try to do? Is he shooting for the brass ring, or what do you think?
Yeah, he's going for the brass ring. And when it fails, the Democratic Party's going to be in trouble.
Yeah. I agree with you. If he shoots for the brass ring and tries to do everything, yes, it will be a huge indictment on the Democrat Party and policies. Yes, because it will show that we tried to do this and we promised you everything, and then when we tried to do it, it failed. Yeah, that's going to be a problem.
You want to know what the unemployment rate is in Finland?
Sure.
7.2%. It's double what it is here in the United States. All right, Marcus, I appreciate the call. Marcus's line is open, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971. Let's go to Joe Littleton. Good morning, Joe. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Good morning. I'm a little perplexed about this. Maybe you guys can shed some light. Okay, in Littleton, we had that 3A, which meant there were going to be high density.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and I had texted Billy before about how we had the liberal signs up. They all went down because a conservative came by and said, you're going to have the high density. So they put the conservative signs up because the conservatives were against that. Now, the high density did not pass here. However, all the candidates that were running against that said we don't want the high density, none of them made it. And so it's like, okay, they usually don't vote in Colorado for high density type things, nor do they vote for this, trying to get rid of the Tabor. On both sides, usually. Okay? So how does that make sense? In my head, it's the social issues. Am I way off with that?
What do you mean by social issues? Because I'm trying to figure out how in city council, I think one of the worst losses last night was Robin Carnes. She doesn't embrace any of the social issues. She's about as moderate as it gets, talented, smart, and she lost.
I don't know. That's what I'm trying to make sense out of. What is it that allows these liberals to vote for that kind of thing? So they're kind of thinking it's touching their money, or it's touching where they live, but certainly they won't vote for that candidate. It doesn't make logical sense to me, and I'm trying to figure it out. If anybody has...
Joe, I think you being logical is probably what makes you unique in this state. Yeah, I mean, it kind of bounces all over the place. People would often say, well, we need more moderate Republicans to run, not the firebrands. Well, we did have moderate Republicans. They ran last night. They all lost. Yeah. And then, 3A may have just had more money into it, and so they were able to get out there and advertise more than some of the other candidates, and maybe that explains some of it.
I don't know.
And then, believe me, Joe, I go down and talk to these folks.
I know.
Logic is not their strong suit.
No. Okay, here's another thing. You have somebody like Biden who is in 4 years. That's 4 years of messing this economy up under capitalism.
Yep.
Totally messing it up. So Trump comes in and everybody expects it to get done within a year.
Yeah.
That ain't going to happen.
Right.
And so give this man a chance, because I believe capitalism does work. You take any of these young kids and you stick them over in Cuba or you stick them over in Venezuela, they'll be changing their tune.
I think a lot of it is not realizing how good it is because of capitalism. I watched a man post a video, or a spouse did, but the man weeping during Halloween. He's from Cuba.
Oh,
and he is sitting there going, you have no idea. Nope. There is no trick-or-treating in Cuba. Kids, there's no candy to be handed out. Are you kidding? And then you watch the collapse that's happened in Venezuela. There's a reason why conservatives are so fired up about trying to stop socialism, is because it results in a tremendous amount of human suffering. So, Joe,
Jeff, can I say one more quick thing?
Please, yeah.
I'll do it quickly. When I grew up, we were dirt poor. I mean, really poor. Welfare, all that stuff. So when I got a teaching job, and God, I love those kids. But anyway, I was in this teeny dinky room. It was enough because I did just special reading, and so I'd have 8 groups a day. But anyway, so I had this little teeny table and just enough for a file desk, okay, a file. The teachers would come and say, I don't know how you do this. I don't know how you teach in this tiny little area. I said, because I am thankful to have a job. I think our kids are hugely spoiled.
Joe, I think you're right. All right, Joe, appreciate the call. Joe's line is open, 303-696-1971. Are the kids today too spoiled? And now they just want socialism. They want more handed to them. Give us a call. Join the conversation. Now, though, is time for Bill Thorpe's You Choose the News. Coming up next, you're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We'll continue the discussion about what happened, not only here in Colorado, but across the country last night. Clearly a blue wave. A socialist blue wave? Is this the future of the Democrat Party? Is it going to be successful in general elections? And do you see Congress changing during the next general election as a result of what happened today? Or will it collapse faster than we could imagine? We'll get to all of that and more. Now it's time, though, for Bill Thorpe's You Choose the News.
Yes, it's that time of the morning where we play America's favorite fake radio news game show, You Choose the News. You know how this works. I browse the interwebs for really dumb stories about us humans, give them even more ridiculous headlines so that we can play this fake radio news game show, because those in charge do not wake up until 7 o'clock, so we are left unsupervised and are going to take full advantage. As always, Blake Olson joins us from the newsroom. Gentlemen, here are the headlines today. Headline number 1, giant attack. Headline number 2, I do my own stunts. Headline number 3, can I keep it? And headline number 4, bad advice.
Let's start with giant attack.
Yeah, giant attack. Oh, this is a rather upsetting news story, but I wanted to share it with everybody. Here we are talking about a father and son who are from Idaho. Daniel Owen and his 15-year-old son, Cooper. They are currently living in Vietnam. That's where dad has his job. But unfortunately, on a recent vacation, they passed away while ziplining in Laos. How? Why? Hornets. Owen and Cooper were stung by hundreds of what were giant Asian hornets as they were leaving a tree with their guide at the adventure resort. So they were ziplining as they were changing from one line to the next. They disturbed a nearby nest, and the giant hornets went after them. The father and son reportedly conscious when they arrived at the clinic. However, they died a few hours later after being taken to the hospital. Anaphylactic shock not suspected at this time. Bodies covered by red spots, the doctors say. Got to be very painful. The stings were more than 100 on each body. I've never seen anything else like it before, said one of the attending physicians. Yeah,
that's horrible.
I know. And the park is now going to be reviewing procedures and looking at the idea of let's make sure there aren't any hornets' nests near the zip line.
Yeah, and maybe sued into oblivion, too.
So it depends what the laws are there, too. That's the thing. It's in Laos. So who knows? Yeah.
Goodness.
Alrighty. Blake Olson, I do my own stunts. Can I keep it or bad advice?
Bad advice.
Yeah, bad advice. Hey, when you think Kim Kardashian, of course, we all think bad advice, don't we,
Yes.
Governor Polis? Absolutely. Now, here's the thing. Kardashian star recently said during an interview with her All's Fair co-star Tiana Taylor that she used ChatGPT to help her study for her exams to pass law school. And ChatGPT lied. She said, my experience was when I asked them a question, they were always wrong. It has actually made me fail tests all the time. And then I get mad and I yell at it. Hey, Kim, if you're asking ChatGPT to answer the question on your test, it means you don't know what you're talking about, and maybe you shouldn't be taking the test. That is a personal opinion, not necessarily held by everybody else. But that's it. When she's complaining about the fact that ChatGPT made me fail, no, you're not doing the damn studying. You're asking the computer that, she said she'd talk to it and say, how do you feel about making me fail? It's not a person. God, you talking shoe. This is ridiculous. It's not a person.
I can't believe she admitted that.
Yeah.
I asked it for the answer, and it gave me the wrong answer, so I failed the test.
Stop asking the computer, you moron. It's pretty easy to fix this. Yeah, exactly. Because I don't think people understand. ChatGPT, those large language and learning models, not a search engine. When you give it something, it does not go to the depths of the universe to look for the right answer. It looks for a sequence of words that most often occurs together that might be the right answer. And it's also told you and instructed, even if it doesn't think the answer is right, it needs to give you an answer. So if you're asking ChatGPT and other large language learning models for the answer, you're doing it wrong. Doesn't work that way. Alrighty, Jeff, here we go. I do my own stunts, or can I keep it?
I do my own stunts?
Yes, I do my own stunts. Recently, a report of someone stunt driving at night at a church parking lot. This happened in North Charleston just this past Sunday. Well, the officers from South Carolina's Low County is where it was in North Charleston. Police said that officers responded about 10:45 in the evening to a report of a man driving recklessly on Nesbitt Avenue. When they found there were empty beer cans, tire marks consistent with the vehicle doing donuts right there in the street. And while patrolling the area, officers received another call about a car stopped in the roadway on James Bell Drive with its horn blaring and traffic completely blocked. Well, officers showed up and found, hey, there's our suspect. And surprise, he's wearing only underwear and a tank top with a blanket wrapped around him, as one does. The 36-year-old North Charleston man also smelled strongly of alcohol, you don't say, and in his vehicle during a search revealed a scale white powder that tested positive for cocaine. Yes, he also pointed a firearm at deputies and other property while they were arresting him. So, yeah, he kind of clicked all the boxes. Yeah, nice job. Again, doing donuts, no pants. Nice job there. All righty, that's the end of You Choose and News. Jeff, back to you, sir.
All right, phone lines nearly jam-packed. I've got one open line if you want to jump in on this, 303-696-1971. We'll continue with our discussion of last night's election results. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
KNUS.